one of the questions that came in here, Eddie, actually, and thank you for sending your questions in. Eddie, there's a question came in here with regard to the quality of autumn grass in terms of for store cattle or finished cattle. Is there any difference in terms of the quality or the feed value of the grass as we go into the autumn? And if so, what sort of level of supplementation or what type of supplementation would you typically be talking about? And I know you've done research on that.
So as a general rule, once we come to September or so, we begin to see maybe the quality of grass, the feeding value, even though it might be leafy, tending to fall away. However, and I would say in that situation, that grass per se is probably sufficient to meet the requirement of the animals, even though it might be a bit poorer than early in the season. As long as grass supply is adequate, one will be slow to talk about feeding concentrates at pasture, okay? And the only where I would maybe consider feeding concentrates at pasture, first of all, if there's no grass, you have to do something about it. That's a different question. But if grass supply, is limited, or if there's cattle who are getting close to finish, maybe they're 30 to 40 kilograms from the end, you might say maybe at some stage in September, maybe in August, you might begin to introduce meal to try to finish them off pasture, but they're getting close to finish when you're doing that. The work that we've done here at Grange would suggest that any animals that are planned to go indoors for finishing, that really there's little or no point to feed them at pasture. The best thing is to keep them at pasture for as long as you can, then go in and finish inside, rather than trying to straddle both.
Okay. Another question, and it goes back to a point that you made, Sean, earlier, is that you specifically grow red clover silage to feed weedlings and to feed finishing stock. The question has basically come in, what sort of is your experience of red clover? Can you explain how you manage it and how you keep it in the sward?
Yeah, so red clover is, I suppose, in essence, it's my pride and joy. It's the high quality, producing high quality high 80 DMD silage, high protein that is going to be there to grow those cattle out. I suppose from a management perspective, it's about taking care of it. It is my pride and joy, treat it as such. So that means don't go out and abuse it early in springtime. If you need to graze it, make sure the weather is dry. If you're going out to cut it, try and again cut it in the dry as much as you possibly can, or just limit the amount of heavy machinery that's going out on it. And then it's about soil fertility again. You need to feed it. It doesn't need nitrogen. You can grow a lot. It'll fix a lot of its own nitrogen, but it needs its P's and K's. So going back out with the slurry and topping up what might be a deficit if it's needed to be on top of that slurry. But as long as you treat it with a bit of respect and give it the feed that it needs, you can get upwards of 5-6 years out of that.
You were saying that you were getting up to 14 tonnes dry matter per hectare.
Yeah, so last year's yield was 14.5 tonne of dry matter a hectare.
As a follow-on to that, Eddie, one of the points of this whole week is about sustainability in beef. There is some indications that coming down the tracks that we're going to be asked to maybe incorporate more clover in our swards as a way of maybe reducing their sort of chemical nitrogen input as such. But would you concur with the point that Sean made, about how important soil fertility is if we're going to try and establish clover?
Well, absolutely. I think it is one of the key corner blocks that we're going to talk about, or should do. If we're going to get clover into our pastures, there may be a challenge to incorporate it. And then we're talking about beef farmers, so most of the pastures are permanent. So the challenge is, how do we get it in maybe without reseeding? Even though reseeding is obviously the clear, easiest way to do it. Whatever challenge we have of getting it in there, maintaining it there, if the soil is low pH, so it's acidic, certainly that's going to make the persistence of clover a real challenge. So I would have said, as we said in the very beginning, if we're going to do anything with our pastures, and especially for clover, the soil pH has to be corrected, okay? So we're back to where we started from. The soil pH must be right, and as Sean said, the P and the K are important.
One question that has come in here from Joe in Wicklow, and I'll direct this to you, Christy, is why should we use a combination fertilizer types rather than one compound? And I know Sean mentioned that, and as part of the Chagas-Mack curve in terms of mitigating against emissions, that he's using protected urea. So, what would you say to Joe?
Okay, I suppose
There's a number of factors. If phosphorus is an issue on the farm, we know that there isn't any urea or protected urea-based compounds with phosphorus in them. So obviously, if we want to try and maximise the use of protected urea, we put it in a situation where you need nitrogen, you need potassium, and it contains sulfur. And otherwise then if there's phosphorus needed, then you might have to go in directly with straight phosphorus. So it'll be very much farm specific, and it will be, the times have changed now and we have a lot of, protected urea compounds in, and we need to find places where, we can maximize the benefits of protected urea. So it's very much farm specific, but again, that's the complexity of the issue, in that if you need to get phosphorus in and you also want to get in use protected urea, you end up having to maybe go with something like a straight P.
Maybe to make the point, Aidan, if Joe was interested in looking at the programme that was broadcast last night, there was an entire section given over to the whole idea of explaining protected urea and its ability to reduce emissions. So if he's interested in that, he might just look in and see that programme from last night.
Okay, thanks for that, Eddie. And I mean, look, there's lots of very good material has been put out this week, a huge effort by Teagasc staff to get lots of information there. It's up there on the web that you can access at any time. You obviously don't have to watch it live like we are tonight. It can be accessed at any time. One very quick question, Krusty, and it's a bugbear of mine. I see lads spending lots of money year on year, and they tell you, I have to reseed. And two or 3 years down the track, they've spent all this money and the field has reverted back to the grass types that were there before they set the plough or before they tilled it at all. Give me your take on that, and you need to be brief because the clock, as I say, is going to beat me here.
Okay. First of all, if you're going to reseed, you're putting in a very high yielding grass. So if you haven't been feeding the grass adequate, it's been there already with adequate nitrogen, phosphorus and potash, there isn't any point in going in reseeding. First thing I would look at on a farm and see is there additional grass growth required here? Is there somewhere else that I can spend that equivalent to that 300 an acre on the area that's been reseeded when I know it's only going to get 30 or 40 units of nitrogen? It's not going to last. So I agree with you. There's a place for reseeding, where there's a high levels of stocking rate and you can get the benefit out of those top-end varieties of grass. But if you're not going to feed it or not going to have a demand for grass, I don't think it's a role to play on some farms. Work with what you have, but certainly on the higher stock farms, it's an absolute requirement.